From ABC News, Russia launches new IRBM at Ukraine. Zelensky says Putin is terrified. Officials in Kiev initially said an ICBM had been launched towards Dnipro. Now, here's what's interesting about this. The initial reports were that it was a MIRV, a multiple independently targeting re-entry vehicle. That's an intercontinental ballistic missile. If that's true, it's the first use of an intercontinental ballistic missile in war ever. The U.S. later came out denying it, saying it was not an ICBM. It was an intermediate-ranged ballistic missile. They say it's modeled off of an ICBM that Russia has, but it's not a nuclear weapon. It's an intermediate-range ballistic missile strike. So it's much, much less powerful. But it may actually be very comparable. If it is modeled off of, I think it's called like the RES-26 or something like that, it would carry 4 warheads. So it's a smaller yield weapon, but it's a ballistic missile strike on Kiev. That could explain why Kiev thought it was an ICBM, because it looks very, very much like an ICBM. However, I'll also add the West, NATO, US could be lying because they are scared that this would be a direct escalation. So let me put it this way. Russia keeps saying, ooh, if you do this, I'll nuke you, but then they don't. The West similarly does not want escalation outside of their control. So if Russia actually did this time launch an ICBM, the West, not wanting to enter the fray on their terms, it's Sun Tzu, would say, no, don't worry, it's not an ICBM, it was a ballistic missile strike.
It could be. Hold on. An IRBM is essentially the same thing as an ICBM. It's just for a different range. Like it says, an IRBM is a type of ballistic missile with a range between 3,000 and 5,500 kilometers. This category falls between medium-range ballistic missiles and intercontinental ballistic missiles. IRBMs are designed for regional targets and often used for military and strategic purposes. Payload capacity several hundred kilograms, speed of around Mach 20, a guidance system often using inertial navigation or terrain reference systems, and the ability to carry conventional or nuclear warheads. So it's the same thing as an ICBM. Exactly. It's just that it doesn't have it doesn't go as far.
The differential of ICBM and IR is not about payload capacity. It's not about does it have a nuke or does it not? Because you can have an ICBM without a nuke on board.
Right.
But it's about how far can they travel. That's all this is.
So the question is, have IRBMs been used in war ever?
The reason why they haven't, or the R part, I don't know, but I think this is significant because ICBMs, or I think for IRCBMs, they're supposed to be nuclear. It was conventional attack,
this is the
but
first.
not nuclear.
This is so sorry. The Department of Defense is saying this is the first time this weapon has been used. Oh no! They're saying on the battlefield in Ukraine. Come on, get specific, guys. Both ICBMs and they're the same thing. ABC News outright says that IRBMs can carry nuclear payloads. Yeah. It's the RS-26 Rubez missile, not RES.
And technically, from Southeast Asia to Australia, you could hit it with an IRBM, so it would be intercontinental. It's just a different term.
I think this is a message to us, not to the Ukrainians. This is overkill. The Russians didn't need this missile to hit Ukraine. They were just showing that they had the ability to.
This legit was a MIRV. I'm telling you, the West saying it's not an ICBM, calm down, is to control public sentiment towards the war.
Yeah.
If they come out right now and say this is no different, this was a MIRV, this is the first time they've used it in combat, a multiple independently targeted reentry vehicle. So it's a ballistic missile that shoots in the air and then ejects several payload that can target independent things. So depending on the power of a MIRV, you can get one that can carry 8 to 12 warheads. One rocket. It has a ridiculous amount of power, and I want to stress this. People need to understand the bombs we dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki are incredibly, incredibly weak compared to technology that was developed in the 60s. So modern nuclear weapons have around 1,250 times the explosive potential of Little Boy and Fat Man? And those were gravity bombs.
Nagasaki?
Right, those were gravity bombs. That's a bomber flies over the target and drops it, and it whistles. Then the kinetic impact, boom. Modern weapons are rockets that drop payloads that airburst and then spread all over and just, it's nuts.
And the megatons are way, 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 way more.
Yeah.
Right. And the RS-26 has a payload range of 150 kilotons to 300 kilotons, which would, if a missile of that power, just one of its warheads, unless they're multiplying by 4, but assuming that each warhead is going to be in that range, between 150 and 300 would eliminate the entire metro area of Washington, D.C.
I don't want to mince words. This is obviously an escalation. I will say, though, I do think Russia is treading lightly, though, because according to Reuters, at least, a U.S. official said Russia notified Washington before its strike. And while another official said the U.S. has briefed Kyiv and its allies to prepare for the possible use of such a weapon, they did not want the Americans to confuse this for an attack on them.
Exactly.
They did not want them to.
Well, the whole point was they didn't, because the U.S. and other countries, obviously, but because the U.S. does have advanced monitoring systems, a missile like this, when it launches, it took like 5 minutes was the actual travel time, but a missile like that, within 1 minute, I read a book by, I forget the woman's name, but she was talking about what happens in a nuclear
war. She saw her on
just on Joe Rogan a couple months ago or whatever.
Nuclear war. What can happen?
So I read her book, and
terrifying,
and it's really good, but like they know about the launches. Within 30 seconds, they have a trajectory within the first few minutes. I think 7 minutes or something like that. So the Russians use the existing communication lines for nuclear launches to connect with the United States and say, "Hey, we're going to do this." Yeah. Just so you know, it's not a nuke.
And it's not coming to you.
Yes,
it's hitting Ukraine.
Also, it sounds like it was a warning shot from the Russians saying this could have had nukes on board, by the way.
Well, yeah.
It's like a dry run. It's a dry
flex
run,
of capability to just show what they're capable of doing.
Well, that's all Russia has left, this kind of nuclear saber rattling. Conventionally, I think they are failing to achieve what their initial military goals were in Ukraine. And now Putin's best weapon right now is trying to scare people into thinking that he would use nuclear weapons.
And hold off for 2 months until Trump's in office. I just did post a thing. I wasn't able to confirm or deny it, but that Putin's basically saying when Trump's in office, I'm open to discussing the ceasefire. Let's get this over.
Well, I don't think it's so interesting because I hope Trump will be able to come to some sort of agreement between Putin and Zelensky in Ukraine. But I just don't see the interests aligning up like that. I don't think the Ukrainians want to give up any of their sovereign territory. A lot of pro-Ukrainian people still think they want to liberate Crimea, which I don't think is ever happening. While on the other side, I think it's within Putin's geopolitical interest to continue pushing west. He didn't think he got enough of Ukraine. I think he wanted to go up until at least Kiev early on in the war. I think that was his objective.
If he kept pushing, I would advocate for war against the Russians.
I think he was successful. Wait,
he kept conquering west?
Wait.
Crazy,
if he got to Kiev, I mean, I think that was his goal.
If he east of the Donbass, I understand that he wants access to the Black Sea for portage.
You think he just wants up until the Donbass, though?
Yeah, I think they want to transport steel through the Black Sea into the Mediterranean.
You think he'd be satisfied with the Donbass?
20 to 30% enhance in their GDP as a result of trade.
Ian and Elaad, there is a reason that NATO exists, right? Ukraine is not NATO.
Oh, I didn't say go to war with
him. Okay, so, but
Ukraine.
Poland is a NATO country now, right? And it borders Ukraine. You do not need to go to war for Ukraine. You do not need to go to war with Russia, like direct war with the United States and Russia for Ukraine. If they were to attack Poland, then things are different because of NATO.
It's not
Do you think
Ukraine,
we should go to war with Russia if they were to invade Poland? Because I think for most people, you say
that's
Ukraine,
a contractual agreement. You'd have to.
They don't even know the difference.
The treaty alliance would require it.
But that's on paper.
People understand the difference between NATO and non-NATO countries. At least I think.
Barely.
Isn't that the crux of the issue?
That's the whole point of me saying this is because, like Ian said, go to war over Ukraine. The whole point is Russia doesn't want
NATO expansion
into Ukraine. Doesn't want the United States to go and be defending Ukraine. That's what Russia said.
I agree.
And so, like, to go to war over Ukraine,
no, it's not about Ukraine.
That's insane.
It would be about the belligerents. If he was actually trying to conquer Europe, which I don't think he is, if he showed his hands like, look, I really do want to conquer, then it's like, no, Hitler 3.0, we're not going there.
Yeah. That's what I said, though.
That's what I said
when I said.
It doesn't matter if Putin wants to conquer Europe or not. The wars that we're facing are not just some evil guy twirling his mustache, Vladimir Putin sitting in his chair and being like, no, we will take all of Russia now. No, he's saying we need access to Crimea. We are not giving up a multi-billion-dollar industrial port and where our Black Sea fleet is stationed. And this is where we do a lot of our trade. And we will secure a land bridge. And we will secure the Sea of, the Sea of Azov? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
So, and he says, we're going to have that. Then what happens is the U.S. gets involved and starts supplying weapons. Then we blow up their flagship. Then Russia says they're attacking us when we're trying to secure this resource. How do we stop them? We're going to have to push them beyond the borders of the regions we have to control. Then you get Belarus involved. Then all of a sudden, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland are saying Belarus is mobilizing and they're transporting weapons in Belarus. So Poland starts mobilizing. Now you've got Germany calling up 800,000 troops. It's not because any one side is trying to conquer. It's because there's one point where both sides bump into each other, and then they keep saying, I'm going to win. No, you're not. It's a game of chicken that both people are going to crash into each other. You don't need Putin saying, I want to take over Europe to get full-scale World War III. Putin can say to China, look, if we lose access to Sevastopol and to this base, it's going to decimate our economy, and it's going to give NATO too much control. Give us weapons and troops, and we'll end this quickly. China, now they've detained a Chinese vessel in the Baltic that Denmark is accusing of severing communications cables, which people fear may be a precursor to a larger scale attack. If China is involved and trying to grab some plausible deniability, this could escalate then with the U.S. saying, now we're going to put sanctions on China because you did this. All of it is dominoes falling over. Yep. Nobody wants war. War is a last resort. And this is a fact. There's a lot of people are going to say, no, the war machine, they want war. I get that. The war machine makes money by selling weapons and all these things. What I'm saying is, for governments, what they want is money. For the military-industrial complex, they don't necessarily want war. They want sales. And so for Russia, they're thinking, we want to increase our economy. We want to get more for our people. Putin's saying largely for himself. And how do you do that? Well, we need access here. NATO is saying, Russia's charging us too much, and we need cheaper energy to Europe so that we can get costs down and expand the European economic bloc so that we can compete with China. So they claim. Both sides are fighting over limited resources, and it's going to be dominoes falling over, and it could potentially bubble up into something crazy unless, and this one's easy, Donald Trump intervenes in 2 months and says, we are done. It is better to accept the loss of Luhansk, Donetsk, Mariupol, and Zaporizhia, and I guess what is that also, Kherson? If it means no World War III, we don't care about Ukraine. Step back. Russia takes this territory. There's sanctions, there's penalties, whatever it might be, but there's no reason to do a tit for tat that expands to the point where they're going to start firing more ICBMs,
Tim,
IRBMs.
Do you believe that Russia would be satisfied with just the Donbass and Crimea? Okay.
Do you think there's some kind of like aspirational goal of Soviet bloc dominance that motivates Putin to have some sort
I think
of
they want
regional,
defendable borders.
100%.
This like greater Rus ideology.
Soviet Empire.
100%.
Very much into that.
Vladimir Putin is mad the Soviet Union collapsed. He didn't think it needed to happen, and he's been trying to rebuild it with the Russian Federal. The Federation Trade. What is it? Whatever it's called. The Russian Federation Trade bloc or whatever. The conflict in Ukraine, as complicated as it is, one component is that before Yanukovych was ousted, NATO and the EU were offering up deals to Yanukovych, saying, "Hey, open up trade with Europe." Do these things. We're going to normalize your economy. It's going to be able to join the EU, the Schengen zone, all of that. Your citizens will come and go as they please. Vladimir Putin said, if you open up trade to Europe and you have free trade with us, that means Russian goods are going to flood into Russia and displace our manufacturing base. We can't have free imports. There has to be some controls on it.
European goods?
Into Ukraine?
So let me rephrase.
You might have misspoke. You said Russian goods will flow into Russia. You meant
Ukraine.
European goods will flow through Ukraine, and then because Ukraine has free trade with Russia, into Russia. Russia is basically saying, if we make a T-shirt here, and they start making it cheaper over there, and then it comes into Russia, we lose jobs. We can't do that. So they said to Ukraine, you're going to have to choose whether you want free trade with Europe or free trade with us. Yanukovych then says, oh boy, we got some leverage. The West then says, yeah, and we've got the CIA. So you get bubbling up protests. I'm not saying the CIA directly orchestrated this. I'm saying they have soft power and manipulation telling Ukraine, you're going to go this route. Yanukovych tried playing both. He gets ousted, flees to Russia. They install a more West positive government that favors NATO and the EU. Vladimir Putin says, okay, now we're going to lose access to our industrial port and our Black Sea fleet staging area, which is the naval base in Sevastopol. They are not satisfied with a single bridge in the Kerch Strait.
That's east, yeah.
Right, and so that got bombed recently. So Russia's thinking we need stronger control and access to this region. So, of course, they're going to take these regions so they can secure Sevastopol. Many people have said, but Tim, why don't they just build in Sochi and build a naval base there? You're telling Russia abandon military technology, engineering, and a base they've been using since the Soviet Union. They're just going to say no. It's hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's control and access. They're not just giving up the technology. They're not just giving up the infrastructure. They're giving up this regional control, this regional port. So then they're going to try and take this. Now, it's possible Russia tries to push in for more. I doubt it. And I think the issue is that already you have Estonia and Latvia, Lithuania, Poland. They're in NATO, and Ukraine now is inching towards it, and they're saying they want to do that. Russia's basically like, okay, so on our entire border is one military alliance. As many people have said, we would not tolerate it if Russia started arming Mexicans and the cartels were fighting and stuff either. I'm not saying Russia's right. Russia's invasion was wrong. I'm just saying they may stop with taking the Donbass. And it's not just that. It's Luhansk, Donetsk, Mariupol, Kherson, Zaporizhia, and then they control Crimea already.
Russia's so big, man. They have all that other stuff.
They need energy.
They got all that.
I know. You ever look at the globe and be like, man, Russia's big.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Some of those maps
Just as a
are-
counter to what you just
But most of it, there's a lot
Russia's
of it
like
that's
big.
frozen, man.
It's like big. No, I know what you
It is big. It's got more surface area than Pluto.
Yeah, and
So I read on the internet one time. Well, let's do this.
and they have
Possibly
dragons.
true.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.